Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another edition of Ville on the Ville. Whole lot to talk about today. The first thing I'm going to start off with, because it was the most recent action, was the women falling a little disappointed in the early performance on Monday night against UConn. But as I spoke about in my quick take the other day, loved the way they responded after that rough first quarter. Really came back, showed some resolve, and fought back and really set themselves up for if a rematch happens with UConn, I think they can feel confident that they can compete and have a chance to win. And let's be honest, that game would be far more important than a regular season game against the Huskies. So all in all, the takeaways from that were, despite the fact you didn't win, I think they still look pretty good. They returned to action in conference last night against Boston College. They stayed up in the Northeast, shook off some cobwebs early against a clearly overmatched Eagles team. Although they came out red hot, hit several three-pointers early on, built up to a 13-point lead. But you could tell really from the get-go, and I think that probably led to Louisville probably not having as much respect as they should have going into the game, that Louisville had a serious decided advantage in talent and athleticism. And that took over once the game, kind of got settled in. You saw the Eagles kind of hit a wall really midway through the second quarter. The women trailed 27-18, closed the first half on a 14-0 run, took a 5-point halftime lead. Early in the second half, it went back and forth just a little bit, and then they really took over. And as you can see here, after trailing by 13 points or 11 or 13 points early, they outscored them 75-29 over the final three quarters for a dominating 87-52 win, keeping them atop the ACC, tied in the loss column with Notre Dame, but we know they obviously have the tiebreaker over the Irish. So again, that loss to UConn, a little disappointing, but the more important thing for the women, get that ACC regular season championship secured by winning these last four games, and they started that last night against Boston College. 6 players in double figures. After that slow start, they really poured it on, getting contributions from all 5 starters, as I said, and then Kylie shook off the bench, adds another double-figure score. She was amazing in the fourth quarter, really. 3 3-pointers, got rebounds, got 4 steals, doing all sorts of things, and you're seeing her contribute more. She was absent against UConn, which was a little, maybe just that moment got to her, but her size and ability to hit 3-pointers is a difference maker for Louisville off the bench. So hopefully she'll continue to contribute like that throughout games, not just in fourth quarters, but she was in there and really the commentators last night, BC homers obviously, even they were very impressed by Kylie Shook, and she's really been a big contributor for the Cardinals. But they'll now look ahead. They travel down to North Carolina. This is that brutal stretch I talked about in an episode last month where they were just away from the Yum Center for an extended period of time. They're right in the middle of that right now. They've got one more game to go. They travel down to take on North Carolina in Chapel Hill Sunday. And a North Carolina team that right now, typically they're pretty talented, and they probably have some good talent on that team, but right now they sit kind of in the middle of the ACC, not having the kind of season they're used to having. But still, you saw the way the women came out against Boston College. Carolina, a much better team, so you need to come out focused from the get-go, take care of business, because then you're going to return home for your final 2 games that, again, teams, Virginia, they were at the top of the conference early on, but we saw how much better Louisville really is than Virginia. The Cavaliers were a beneficiary of a very lopsided schedule. They didn't play any of the big dogs in the ACC until they played Louisville. Louisville dominated them in Charlottesville, so they got Virginia in the return game, and they'll close out against what will be a very overmatched Pittsburgh team. So this Carolina game, this is probably the biggest hurdle left, just because it's on the road, and you know you're going to get a team that probably has some good talent, and you're going to get their absolute best shot at trying to take down a top 5 team and the top team in conference here as they close out the regular season. So they really need to come in focused from the get-go, get contributions from as many as they can, and show that they're dialed in. And if they do that, they should take care of business. But again, you can't start games out and get in the habit of starting slow out of the gate, because you're going to get a team that has a little more talent than Boston College did, and then you're going to find yourself in a pretty big hole. So let's look and see what we get on Sunday afternoon at 2:30 down in Chapel Hill as the women try to get their last victory in a road game in ACC play. And if they do that, they'll have a perfect road record in the ACC because, again, they lost the home game against Florida State. Taking a look at the standings and how they are, of course, the women at the top, and Notre Dame is right there, holding serve. So, again, you can't afford to blow any games here late. If you do, then you're probably going to drop that regular season number one seed in the ACC tournament. So that's why every game is still just as important as if, everybody was undefeated. So the ladies need to take care of business down there against the Tar Heels, and then just moving forward, hopefully those 2 home games, they'll be able to take care of business in those as well. But then you have Florida State 2 behind. So Florida State, if Louisville should lose 2 out of their last 3 and Florida State went out, then they'd have a chance. But I don't see that happening. That will be an absolute disastrous scenario. So really it's just Louisville and Notre Dame as we close out these last few games in women's ACC play. And again, every game is important because the Irish have not dropped another one after they were dominated by the Cardinals earlier this season. So we'll see how that goes. And I think they should get it done. I think we've seen generally some pretty good focus. But again, the first quarter of the last 2 games, they've been dominated by a really good team and by a really bad team. So let's see if they can shake that first quarter cobwebs off on Sunday in Chapel Hill. Now moving on, speaking of Chapel Hill and the Tar Heels, the men also take on. We've seen that theme this year. The men and women have played a lot of games against the same team, whether it's home or away, on a regular basis, and that happens again this weekend, although the women are at Chapel Hill and the men host the Tar Heels here in Louisville as the Cardinals look for a resume-building win against North Carolina on Saturday night at the KFC Yum Center. And it's been really, when you look at the schedule for Louisville, you typically think of a schedule that's loaded with a lot of good teams, consistent, big-name opponents. And not that they haven't had any decent games this year at home, but when you really think about the big names, Indiana was a little bit down. They're playing better now, but still a bubble team at best. Seton Hall, going to be a tournament team, but outside of that, you just haven't had really a big name yet. Now we get to the end of the season, and your last 2 games at home are easily your biggest 2 of the season. And that starts Saturday night against the Tar Heels of North Carolina, a Carolina team that I've talked about multiple times. A few weeks ago, the roles looked to be reversed. Louisville was surging. North Carolina was fading. Roy Williams, I think, has gone to some lineup adjustments, has gone smaller. Now they still play. They push the pace, as Carolina always does. They want to get up and down, try to get easy baskets even after makes on the other end. So again, it's always a key against Carolina. Transition defense is going to be vital to getting a win on Saturday. They've shot the ball much better, so it's going to be interesting to see. Against Pittsburgh, Louisville went with more of a man-to-man defense. Padgett, for a couple games, had played more of that zone that switches to man because they were getting beat badly off the dribble. Pittsburgh, I guess he felt like they just weren't going to be able to beat Louisville off the dribble like some teams can. North Carolina is a team that they can do that now, that especially that they've gone smaller. Very active, very athletic, and handle the ball. So we'll see what Padgett elects to do defensively against North Carolina. You'd probably think he'd play more of that zone and take your chances that the Tar Heels won't be hot. Luke May is a guy who can shoot the ball, certainly. Probably not a guy that's going to beat you off the dribble a lot, but other guys can. So it'll be very interesting to see how much he mixes it up defensively against the Tar Heels. Now, again, we're going to need to see that activity from Louisville on both ends. Offensively, keep the ball moving. Don't get stagnant. And again, blocking out, getting rebounds, not letting Carolina get second chances when you do get a miss on your end, not letting them get a rebound and push it in transition for easy baskets. So we'll look to see. This is a vital game. If Louisville can get this game, as it says here, a resume-building win, I'm not saying you beat North Carolina. You are without a doubt in. But if they get the win, I think a lot of people, start to remove doubt that Louisville is maybe not an NCAA tournament team. This is a win that puts you in firmly because Carolina is surging, coming off 3 impressive wins in a row, winning at home against Duke, then going to North Carolina State and getting a win, a team that had beaten them in Chapel Hill, and then they backed that up with a win over an also surging and improving Notre Dame team, getting healthy at the right time with Matt Farrell returning into the lineup. They, in a very close game, it was a 1-point game with about 9 minutes left, and the Tar Heels just dropped a hammer on the Irish and they won it by 17. Slightly deceptive, but again, that shows you what Carolina can do when you let them push the pace. At any moment, they can go on a 3 or 4 minute burst that really is the deciding factor in a game, and that's what they did to the Irish earlier this week. The Irish are right there in it. They actually had the ball down one, could have taken the lead. They didn't, and then boom, just like that, Carolina gets a double-digit win. So Louisville has got to keep those 2 or 3 minute spans that Carolina can get. You got to prevent those if you want to get a win. So we'll see on Saturday. How will Louisville's length bother North Carolina now that they've gone smaller? Will Carolina try to stretch them out and drive? The fact that Louisville has played teams like Virginia Tech and Notre Dame probably is going to help taking on this smaller lineup from North Carolina, because that's probably what they're going to try and do, although I'm not sure how effective Carolina is at shooting three-pointers like Notre Dame and Virginia Tech can be when they spread you out. So, again, it's just going to be very interesting to see the options David Padgett goes with defensively. Do you pack it in and just try to contest three-pointers and see if Carolina can beat you from the perimeter? Or do you try to extend the defense and take your chances that they can't get by you and get into the lane and try to use your length to disrupt them, whether it's a perimeter shot or a drive to the basket? But this is a big game. If they drop this one, then the pressure really starts to mount, because the games just don't get any easier when you're talking about turning around on Wednesday night, going to Duke. I don't think many people give Louisville much of a chance of going in and winning against the Blue Devils. Stranger things have indeed happened, but probably not going to happen this year for the Cardinals. So then you're talking about a home game against a team you very seldom beat, have only done it once in the ACC against Virginia. Now, some good karma, I guess you could say, was the only time Louisville has beaten Virginia was in the Yum Center on senior night. That took a miracle shot from Mango Mathiang. And we know how all the other games against Virginia have gone, although the one earlier this year did give us some signs of encouragement. But then you've got 2 road games. Yes, against teams you probably have overall more talent than, but on the road, that's a difference maker in conference. Virginia Tech, we've seen what they can do. They went to Virginia and won, although they were then dominated by Duke. So they are an up and down team, but any team that can spread you out, shoot threes, and drive, you know that can give Louisville fits defensively. So playing at Virginia Tech, certainly not a gimme. And then closing out at North Carolina State, a team that we know is well coached with Kevin Keatts, and they have jumped up and gotten some big names this year. In that game there, who knows, 2 weeks from now, that could be a game that they absolutely have to get in the tournament. So you certainly don't want to go to North Carolina State also desperately needing a win over a Wolfpack team desperately needing a win, because that's just a recipe for disaster heading into the postseason. They get a win Saturday against North Carolina, then the Cardinals can really feel good and feel more comfortable heading into those last 4 games about their chances, and maybe they don't play tight, because that's what you start to worry about. You don't get a win on Saturday, you tighten up, then you go to Duke, probably not going to win that. Then you're looking at the final 3 games, trying to get 2 wins out of those 3 games, with the easier 2 opponents being on the road. So it's just a very difficult setup for the Cardinals moving forward. Now, as far as the standings go, when you look at it and how this sets up, of course, Virginia still cruising along, just the 1 loss. They've pretty much got it wrapped up. Duke and Clemson. Clemson just dropped a game to Florida State, so they dropped down a little bit. They were alone in second. Now the Blue Devils are there tied with them at 9-4. And then what do you know? You've got North Carolina and Louisville right behind them. So really, as tough as this final stretch is, the opportunities it presents for Louisville to really solidify a high seed in the ACC tournament and lock up an NCAA tournament bid are tremendous. If they win Saturday, they jump North Carolina. They go to 9-5, have that tiebreaker over the Tar Heels, and that drops the Tars, of course, to 9-6. Of course, then you go to Duke, you drop that one, then you're 9-6. You're tied with North Carolina. So if you hold serve outside of that Duke game, you tie in the loss column with Carolina, then you get that jump over them by winning Saturday night. Then, of course, you go to Duke, and then you have Virginia at home. So the circumstances are so vast here down the stretch. And, of course, the lesser 2 opponents, if you will, Virginia Tech and North Carolina State, still have above 500 records in conference, and you're playing them on the road. So, I mean, really, when you look at the standings and how Louisville's schedule plays out down the stretch, as I noted on Twitter the other day, Louisville has benefited from a pretty, I don't want to say soft ACC schedule, but a backloaded schedule that now you really start to find out where the medal is for Louisville They only played one team in the top half of only one game over teams in the top half of the conference up until now. Their final 5 games are all against teams in the top half of the conference. So you've got a lot of opportunities to solidify your tournament resume, to solidify perhaps a double bye in the ACC tournament. And if they do that, they'll be the only team since they joined the league to do that every season. Now, they didn't play in the ACC tournament their second year, but they still were a top 4 team. Notre Dame earned that double bye because Louisville opted out of the tournament and gave themselves that self-imposed ban. Otherwise, Notre Dame would have been the 5 seed in 2016. So just a ton can happen down the stretch, and it starts Saturday night in the KFC Yum Center, and Ville on the Ville will be on hand. As I tweeted out the other day, I'm a little quick take. I mentioned I will be there, and this is just the next step in the evolution of an opportunity I hope to have moving forward to provide unique coverage, a new way of covering things via social media, via some other opportunities that I can't really get into now, and I hope to down the road. Tune in on Twitter on the handle TVille73. That will perhaps be changed down the road, but I can't really get into that yet. But what I want to do is provide high-quality photos, some highlights after the game. Can't do that in-game. They don't want you to doing that. And then some post-game coverage as well. One of the visions I have is covering post-game interviews in a way that is a higher quality than we've seen before. Something that aggravates me, and I don't want to blame people for this because it's just one of those tough things when you're covering press conferences is you can hear the coach or the player respond, but you can't hear the question. I'm hoping to change that a little bit, so we'll see how that goes Saturday night. So again, tune in on Twitter, my Twitter handle, and I'll have that in-game photos, some reaction, and then post-game, hope to have some coverage as well. Give me your thoughts. I want to hear from you. What do you think? How did it go? Because that's going to help me, mold this, shape it, improve it, and make it as good as it can be as this hopefully moves forward and progresses. So again, Saturday night, I will be on hand at the Yum Center, and I hope you will tune in, at least post-game especially, and see how things go and see what you think. The baseball team kicked off the 2018 campaign today. They are in action right now, and things just got interesting. I've got it right here. They led comfortably going into the 9th inning 4-0. Got off to a rousing start. Ethan Stringer, in his first collegiate at-bat, hits a home run. Devin Mann provided a solo home run and then drove in a run later on. They led 4-0 going into the 9th inning. Adam Wolf went 5 innings, 5 scoreless innings, got in a little bit of trouble in the 6th, a couple walks. Brian Hoying came in 3 pitches, got 3 outs, got him out of a jam, and then held serve until the 9th inning. And it has just now gone final. The Cardinals hold on for a 4-3 win over the Richmond Spiders. So the 2018 campaign for the Cardinal 9 gets off on a good note, although they made them sweat late. It seems that always is the case. You get into these baseball games and things look to be going just fine, and then you get down to that 9th inning, and what do you know? Then it gets tight. Never an easy way to go when you're watching the baseball. But they get the win 4-3 over the Richmond Spiders. So a nice start to the campaign. And they will play Citadel tomorrow and then wrap things up on Sunday against George Mason down in Charleston, South Carolina. So they look to improve on yet another trip to Omaha from last year. I think they're the only team. They have a current record of 5 consecutive Super Regionals. Can they make it 6? Can they improve on a 53-12 2017 record? I highly doubt it. They're a very young team. Dan McDonnell the other day alluded to, he's not going to complain about being young. Some people took that, is that a shot at John Calipari? Who knows? I liked it either way. But Dan McDonnell leading this team, and he has shown from year to year, they come out, and each season for the past 3 years, you think they're probably going to take a step back. They lost this guy. They lost so much talent. But boy, he plugs the next round of guys in, and they just always seem to step up. I think this year's a little bit different, though. You're talking about losing players. I mean, when you lose, the Golden Glove winner, Brendan McKay, that alone is huge. But then Drew Ellis as well. I mean, 2 of the most dynamic players Louisville has had in quite some time. Both of them now gone. So a lot to replace, but probably still going to be a very talented team, not picked to win the Atlantic. They've done that every year so far in the ACC, but I guarantee you they will make some noise And as the season gets towards the end, probably will be playing their best baseball. And Dan McDonnell, I tell you, so lucky to have him. And I think a lot of people worried when Tom Jurich moved on, but when he was removed, that was one of the names. Bobby Petrino was at the top of the list of people, coaches who people thought might look to quickly move on to other areas from Louisville. But it looks like Dan McDonnell is settling in here, and hopefully because, it's just one of those gems that Tom Jurich pulled out, hiring a guy who had never been a head coach, and he is as impressive as any coach in college baseball. And, when I hear Dan McDonnell talk, I don't know if there's a more just inspiring, just motivating guy, and I think that's why you see the results you see. He's a great coach. He knows what to do, what to say, and he really has turned this Louisville baseball team into a juggernaut. So we'll see how things go moving forward. It's going to be an exciting year. Get out to Jim Patterson Stadium. Got to pay to get in this year, which with everything that's gone on recently, boy, that's a tough pill now to swallow, I think. It would have been nice if they'd have held off on that. But hopefully the fans will get out there and support this team because it's still a pretty good deal when you look at, what you pay to get in and the concessions and things. Pretty good for Cardinal baseball. They will come home next Wednesday on the 21st for 14 consecutive home games. Their home opener against EKU on February 21st. We're supposed to have a warm stretch middle of next week, although it might be wet. Hopefully they'll dodge the raindrops and have some warm weather for that home opener. Their ACC opener will be against North Carolina on March 9th as the baseball season gets underway, and we wish them the best. And they got off to a good start, 4-3 with that win over Richmond down there in Charleston, South Carolina. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Ville on the Ville. Saturday night, KFC Yum Center, the Whiteout. Be there if you can. If you can't, tune into Twitter where I'll provide that coverage, and I want you to give me feedback. Let me know what you think. This has been Ville on the Ville. I want to thank you for tuning in, and as always, go Cards.